Welcome to another episode of Truth on Wheels. I am Don Blackwell, and I am the Executive Director of the Gospel Broadcasting Network. Can we understand the Bible alike? It's a great question. Have you ever been involved in a Bible discussion with someone, and upon talking about a particular passage, your friend says something like this? Well, that's your interpretation. You've got your interpretation, and I've got my interpretation, and neither of us should condemn the other. Just follow whatever you believe it to say. Just do what's right in your heart. Friends, it's very common to hear that sort of thing. Some people will say, we absolutely cannot understand the Bible alike. They will say, how in the world could you expect people in other countries to understand the Bible like you do? Or a person who is in another country, how they understand the Bible is going to depend on how they were raised and where they were raised and the religion that they were raised in. People who grew up Catholic are always going to see religion through Catholic eyes. Muslims are always going to see the world through Islamic eyes. Baptists and Churches of Christ and Mennonites and Jehovah's Witnesses, or whatever it is, that's the way you're going to see it. There might actually be some comfort in this idea because if it were right, then each person could believe whatever he wanted to believe, and it really wouldn't matter. This idea implies that one interpretation is just as good as another because there is no right one. Secondly, this implies that no one would really ever have to make a change because there's really absolutely no standard by which to measure himself. A third implication is that we are more capable than God is. Now, somebody says, what do you mean by that? Why would you say that? Because we are able to understand each other. We are able to write to one another in a way that we get it, we understand it. Every time I have purchased a piece of furniture, it comes with a set of directions, instructions for how to assemble it. I don't read them, I ignore them, but they're there. And the fact that they are there implies that there is a correct way to assemble the furniture. And it implies that people can understand it. You know, YouTube is filled with how to videos, and they teach us how to build, how to fix, decorate, establish, whatever you can think of. They are there to tell us how to do it. You see, we know that mankind is capable of communicating information that we can understand. Are we really to believe that we can do it, but God cannot? We can do what God can't do. To state it very plainly, we are saying that the God who made the universe was not able to communicate to us in a way that we can understand it. So, where did this idea come from? Well, the idea has been around in different forms for hundreds of years, but I want to mention just two sources. The first one is a philosopher by the name of Martin Heidegger. He lived from 1889 until 1976. He suggested that the way we interpret the world is according to how our minds have been preconditioned. And he wasn't just talking about how we interpret words. His theory was the way we perceive music and movies and paintings and nature and life itself is shaped by our motives and our moods and our presuppositions. He said two people can watch a movie and they will come away with two completely different opinions about its message. He said 10 people can listen to the same song and have 10 different interpretations as to its meaning. These perceptions, he says, depends on how each person was conditioned to think before they watched the movie or before they listened to the song. Now, the second person that I want to mention is Rudolph Boltman. He lived from 1884 until 1976. Pretty much their lives overlapped each other, but he transitioned this type of thinking from the realm of philosophy to religion. Boltman said that our perception of the world is so radically different from the way that people in the New Testament saw their world that we just can't possibly understand the writings of the New Testament until we strip the text of references to demons and miracles and other miraculous phenomena. He thinks that's mythology. Then and only then can we get to the real core message of the New Testament. And a lot of modern preachers and theologians have borrowed into that idea. They borrowed on that idea. So, does the Bible teach that one interpretation is just as good as another and that we can't understand the Bible alike? No, it does not. I want to go through some passages with you that would show just the opposite. In John chapter 8 and verse 32, Jesus said, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Friends, this passage implies several things. First, it implies that there is truth, and you shall know the truth. Secondly, it implies that we can know the truth. Thirdly, it teaches that we must know the truth if we're going to be free. Second, consider this passage, John 7 and verse 17. If anyone wills to do his will, he shall know concerning the doctrine, whether it is from God or whether I speak of my own authority. This is Jesus speaking. What's he saying? You can know concerning the doctrine. His point is we've got to be able to understand it alike. That has to be the case if we're going to know. First Timothy chapter 2 and verse 4 says that God desires all men to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. And so there is truth, and God desires that we know it. We can come to the knowledge of the truth. Acts 17 and verse 11, the Bible compliments the people of Berea because they searched the scriptures daily, whether the things that they were being taught were true. Friends, how could that make any sense if we can't understand the Bible in a way that is true and that is accurate and that is consistent? And why would they search it looking for the truth if you can't really know it? In Matthew 22 and verse 29, Jesus said to the Jews of his day, he said, "You are mistaken, not knowing the scriptures nor the power of God." Verse 31, "But concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was spoken to you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? God is not the God of the dead, but of the living." And when the multitudes heard this, they were astonished at his teaching. Now, notice this. Jesus expected people to be able to read the Old Testament scriptures and to come to a uniform understanding about this subject, that being the resurrection of the dead. He said you can read it and you could reach a proper conclusion. There was a correct understanding and they could arrive at it. In Acts chapter 2, the day of Pentecost, the Lord established his church and thousands of Jews became Christians for the very first time. What's interesting is that there was a very diverse audience of Jews. You had people who were there from different countries. You had people who spoke different languages. Some of them were proselytes, meaning that they had converted to the Jewish religion, which means they came from different religious backgrounds, but they all heard a message that resulted in them responding the same way. They understood the message alike. When you read, you may understand my knowledge in the mystery of Christ. Notice that the text says that we may understand. You see, there is no such thing as understanding the Bible differently. If two people differ on the meaning of a Bible passage, one of them is wrong about the matter. Possibly both of them are wrong, but at least one of them is wrong. You see, we might misunderstand something differently, but we don't understand it differently. You know what I mean by that? Now, does that mean it's always going to be easy to understand? No, it doesn't mean that. In fact, in Second Peter chapter 3 and verse 16, the apostle Peter mentions the apostle Paul, and he said that Paul had written some things that were difficult. They were hard to be understood. But notice that he doesn't say impossible. He says it's difficult. It's going to be hard. It's going to take some reading. maybe some studying, maybe some time, maybe some growth, but it's possible. In the first century church, the Jews really had a hard time understanding that God accepted the Gentiles into the church. It was mind blowing to them. And so it's in that context that the Apostle Paul wrote these words, by which, when you read, you may understand. That is, he was saying the information was there in the Old Testament, the prophecies were there. He's saying it's all there. If you will study it, if you will read it, you will be able to see it. Dear friend, God has given us a book that we are capable of understanding. In fact, there are some basics there that we must understand if we're going to go to heaven. If we can help you in any way, please reach out to us at the Gospel Broadcasting Network. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, download our app. There are some great videos there on a variety of different subjects, videos tracing the different books of the Bible. There's free books, free commentaries covering most of the verses of the Bible. And we hope that you'll reach out to us and let us help you. In the meantime, thanks for joining us for this episode of Truth on Wheels.